How's it going? Today is 29th of June, Saturday, and we are taking a look at the market, what kind of opportunities and or what's happening in overall world. Since we're gonna be taking a look at region, and there's a lot of things happening, particularly region as of now, so I thought I'll touch on it. There was a recent statement, something that was published on 24th, that would be that's UK making a statement that would be we urge Somalia to continue its efforts on security sector reform. UK statement. Okay, so let's take a look at the entire sector, and I don't think that within this article, I haven't read about it, I don't think they will touch on the very important points. I'll try to cover those myself, and not necessarily be able to take a look at entire issues. I'll be taking a look at perhaps last 4 weeks, and I can perhaps within 15 minutes touch on four, maybe five different governments, but there's a lot of things happening, right? Then taking a look at the map, we'll try to cover everything what is happening. I was taking a look at the Rwanda deal is something that was signed as well as the entire region. There's so many things happening, right? We're gonna be trying to take a look at Kenya, Somalia, Ethiopia, as well as Sudan. So that's something that we will try to cover, and how one major development can impact entire region, right? And we're gonna be taking a look at that. And within next side, there's a lot of things happening as well. The entire region, there's so many things happening, right? But let's begin by taking a look at Kenya, right? We're gonna be taking a look at some of those articles. I haven't read those articles previously. While I'm taking a look at them, I will be reading these articles. I thought I'll touch on some of the important points and I'll share that information with others. Best place to begin might be we'll then take a look at why Kenya's non-NATO ally status is crucial for regional security. We're gonna be taking a look at perhaps defense and some of those contracts, right? I'll try to touch on the many factors and what we needed to be considered, right? Since there's a lot of protests and they might change its government based on what kind of. But I'm getting ahead of myself, right? Let's take a look at this article. Perhaps it might be worth touching on the important points. So that would be U.S. as well as we can touch on the UK. Kenya's designation as a major non-North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, allied by U.S., elevates its role in regional and/or international security at a time when 1,000 of its police officers prepared battle gangs in Haiti's based capital, Port-au-Prince. So that's not the smartest decision that they made. Moving those people out of their own potentially government city to away from it. That's not a smart decision. But someone is doing something in the region and raising those taxes, and protests been running for 4 days now. It's once that had been said, and announced in the comments as Kenya's President William Ruto embark on the historical state visit of the U.S. To discuss President Biden and much awaited development of Caribbean nation and all other bilateral issues. So I don't think it's as of now relative, and this article was published some time ago. So I think that's when everything has started, right? And that would be May. Okay, so it's very recent. I thought it's some time ago. Currently, Kenya is borrowing a little bit too much in compared to how much it should be borrowed. Advice is to borrow about 55, but it borrowed a little bit more than it should, and they're looking to increase taxes. And part of that, actually, it's spending and the potential spending on military. If they would borrow, I would highly recommend borrowing in their own local currency, not necessarily in other currencies, right? who Kenya in this case don't have any control on. So we can touch on the potential how Kenya or Kenya's government should consider joining different ally. That's opinion, right? Then it comes to borrowing money, not necessarily borrow in the future in dollars, right? Kenya's double-digit debt caused signs of the tough times, right? So we can take a look at some of those numbers and we can try to understand why they keep borrowing in dollars, right? And I have read this article that really Kenya has just taken a calculation risk that paying more than 10% of new international bond is worth in avoided default later this year. Even through history, it literally with examples of its kind of gamble ending in tears. While interest rates have shot up everywhere over the last couple of years, the double-digit borrowing cost remains one of the most obvious warning signs that not all in well is in the country. Kenya had was focusing to a large degree as it was facing a possibility that it will be able to cover a $2 billion bond payment looming in June, right? And I can share perhaps this country's borrowing compared to other countries, right? So that really security measures. Someone is selling security as well as a lot of dollars. Do not take perhaps in the future any dollars, right? I would have advice to do that. Since they can increase that interest rate. So if you're borrowing in someone else's currency, not your own currency, and they would say that your currency is devalued, you would need to pay way more. That's something some of those governments interested in doing, right? I can touch on the different alliances, perhaps. I don't know if it's still available, but perhaps some of those governments reconsider changing the administration if that administration is making such a decisions. There was some articles that I managed to find, but I don't know if it's worth a read. But some of the people up there do think what would be a better direction, if not right now, perhaps in the future for Kenya, right? Now, once we touch on Kenya, let's progress and take a look at Sudan. And I think they have recently invested a lot and they have a port. And if they would be taking a look at and considering perhaps they can potentially give that port to other government to manage this port in return for arms. But that's pretty much it. I won't be delving deeper into this. But that would be when they take a look at arms that potentially military hardware that could be used in a number of different ways, hopefully in defense, right? Let's take a look at Ethiopia and what's happening with regards to its trade since it's developing itself very fast and it costs a lot for its economy when it comes to trade. Myself, I'm interested in coffee since they can produce very high standards when it comes to coffee. But they do not have port taxes and it costs a lot. So they were taking a look at some of these governments were taking a look at how to acquire port taxes and they could potentially there are some agreements. We can touch on that perhaps with something that they take a look at within this article. But we don't have enough time to cover everything in this detail, right? Ethiopia deal lease a port in Somali breakaway region of Somaliland has infuriated the government and Mogadishu and prompted concern with further destabilization of the Horn of Africa's region. Is something that we are taking a look at the entire region in today's video. Under Memorandum of Understanding signed on January 1st, a landlocked Ethiopia will lease 20 kilometers. I think the initial plan was 40, so now it's 20. Either way, they do not need a lot, right? Some of those governments they need only 7, but it's a massive government, Ethiopia, right? So perhaps 20 would be reasonable. or 12 miles around Somaliland port Barbara for 50 years in exchange for a stake in Ethiopia's state-run companies and possibly recognized as independent nation. So this is where things have started, right? Somalia has responded by calling a deal an act of aggression and says it will block Ethiopia's in the meantime strike commercial agreements and address need for access to the sea. Why does Ethiopia want to support Ethiopia, Africa's second most populous country after Nigeria, with 120 million people depending for more than 90% of trade on the port is neighboring Djibouti, where they do have already a lot of military bases, right? And operation costing more than $1.5 billion in a year fees. We can touch quickly on the map, and for people who I think I have covered that previously, this people I knew, that would be Somaliland that potentially would gain and will grant access to Ethiopia to have port and increase the revenue that they could potentially generate by operating this port themselves, right? Since we're taking a look at potentially $1.5 billion, right? We can try to understand what's happening with Somalia and some of its territory, right? And that would potentially lead to some of this conflicts, right? Including Red Sea politics, why Turkey is helping Somalia to defend its waters, right? So that would be, since we were taking a look at Kenya and its defense, as well as now we're taking a look at Somalia when it comes to its defense and our training and what they can receive from Turkey. I won't be delving deeper since this video is going to be too long. We're going to be touching on how many governments are taking a look at this region, right? And how much money are we talking about right now in this region, right? As well as US to build 5 new military bases for Somali army, which faces rebellion by extremist groups, right? And as well as I was trying to find UK. UK is definitely doing something. I can't find any information about UK, but perhaps they might be doing something in the background, right? And we can perhaps touch on last year articles that will be Kenya, like if we were to come back to Kenya and something that was published 1 day ago, that would be what's next after Kenya withdraws financial bill amidst protests. Protests took to the streets against cities across Kenya on Thursday, many calling for President William, okay, let's keep names in, to resign after he voted their demands to withdraw the tax hike bill. So we're looking to increase taxes, right? And we can briefly touch on the what are the numbers. In the 24-25 bill, Kenya's government want to raise taxes by 2.7 billion in additional taxes to reduce the budget deficit and borrowing. Kenya public debt stands at 68. Recommended is about 55. Then 55 GDP recommended by the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. Perhaps this might be worth taking a look at, but there's by the government there's some information about UK's role, but I'm not entirely sure what kind of information is available. Perhaps UK is doing way more, but I just can't find any information. Right? We can take a look at policy paper that will be UK and Kenya Development Partnership Summary. We can briefly touch on its development and the UK's investments into the region, because there is something I just can't dig it. Perhaps by country I can find some information. In this case, we can take a look at trade and investment, and we can take a look at Kenya. That would be progress and 3.4 billion pounds, right? Not necessarily dollars. So at least UK is doing business within pounds, if that makes sense. So I would recommend in the future for Kenya to do business in their own currency and borrowing and giving them that money away. Otherwise, some of those governments up there would hike rates, and sometimes can be by 10%. And then I think in protests, a lot of people got injured as well as lost their lives, right? Perhaps that could be preventable, right? package of the green investment deals agreed between the prime minister, current prime minister, as well as uh, presidents. But let's keep names right. The position that UK has a key partner and our attention to China. Okay, okay. So they keep bringing other governments into the mix. So not necessarily. I do not consider China enemy. I think China is neutral, if you would ask me, and I would highly recommend for a lot of people to stay neutral in all these conflicts, right? Uh, since we're taking a look at borrowing and interest rates, so perhaps we can reflect on some of the statements and what something that's happening within the UK. So I have managed to find some information by national broadcaster, right? And this broadcaster is taking a look at interest rate, which is 3.2 according to them, as well as if you were to take a look at this graph, they would take a look at and would actually explain interest rate went up by at least 20%. Then they're saying 20. I think it's perhaps triple that. This is how much things cost, way more in comparison to inflation, which projected all this kind of things 3.2. So this is perhaps coming back to UK and what's something that's happening within UK, right? How much inflation and its effect on the people and or purchasing power of the pound, right? Once that's been said, we can close on that. Thanks for watching. See you next one.